Good afternoon. Today we are continuing with our interest. We are going into CO28. I can calculate simple and compound interest. So having financial intelligence can help you make informed decisions that can end up saving you a lot of money in the long run. When you borrow a large amount of money from a bank or make a large purchase on a credit card, you are charged interest because, for example, $20,000 today won't have the same value by the time you eventually pay it back due to inflation. So if you're taking a loan out from a bank, usually you get like 5 years to pay it back. Well, the dollar today is very different than the dollar 5 years from now. So if you weren't charged interest, the company you are borrowing from would lose money. Even on small loans or purchases, charging interest is a way for companies to make money in general. Interest isn't all bad though. Money that is deposited into certain types of saving accounts can also earn interest for you.
Please excuse the interruption with Scarlett S. and Mia O. Please return to the office. Thank you.
So we have sometimes interest works against us, sometimes it works for us. So let's look at our different types of interest, types of words that go with interest. So
I'm so sorry, Scarlett K. Thank you.
Oh yeah, too far. My goodness, the board is not cooperating today. So one of the words that we need to know is the principal. This is not principal like the person who leads our school. Okay, this is different. The principal is the original amount. So that original amount of your loan, of the deposit, etc. So the initial amount that you take out, I am going to borrow $10,000. That is your principal amount. Then we have the rate. That is the interest rate. So that's how much extra you're going to have to pay. That's what they're going to be increasing it by. Time is how often the interest is applied. Simple interest is interest that's charged on the principal only. Sometimes they'll charge you on the whole thing, so the principal and the interest that's already accrued. But the simple interest is interest charged on the principal only, not any interest that you've accrued. So that would be P times 1 plus RT. So the principal times 1 plus RT. So an example would be $100 loan at 10%. Simple interest annually. Oops. So we want to find out how long it would take or how much money we're going to be charged over time. So we can make a table for this. We can say we've got the year And then we have your balance, how much you owe. So when you first take it out, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5. When you first take it out at 0, how much do we owe? $100. You took out $100, so you owe $100. So that is your balance. You owe $100. After 1 year's time, if our interest is our interest is 10%, we're gonna owe 10% more than 100. So how much are we going to owe? Chase? $110. So now we're at year 2. How much are we going to owe? Simple interest charged on the principal only. So we want to do our formula. So it's not just 10% of 100, 10% of 100, 10% of 100 that we keep adding on. We want to do our formula. So it would be 100 is our principal times our rate, 1 plus our rate, the interest rate is 10%, times our time, right? So what would we get for year 2? Chase? Not 120. It is 121. Yeah. So you were close, but remember I said we're not just doing 10%, 10%, 10%. We have to do the formula. Yes.
Will the next one be 132?
Close. The next one we actually have some change that it's going to be. It is in the 130s. It's not 132. 133 and 10 cents. Then we go to year 4, it's 140 and 41 cents. Year 5 is 161 and 5 cents. Am I looking at this manual correctly? Or, you know what? That might be the compound interest formula. No.
Because normal, simple interest, you just do 10% of the beginning.
No, but we've got the formula though. You have to use the formula.
No, compound interest formula is way down there.
Yeah. So let's try to work this out and see if we can see how they're getting their answers. So who got 121 for year 2? Was that Garrison?
Me
And Andrea? So how did you do your math, Garrison?
So once it got 110, I did 110 divided by 11. Or no, divided by 10, sorry. Then I got 11. And then I just added the 11 to 110. So I got 121.
How did you do it, Andrea?
I just, when we get to 110, I did something different. I just went 2%.
So you took 10% of 110?
Yeah, so that is well.
And what did you get for year 3? You didn't do it. Okay. Naveen?
Oh, I did it by moving over the decimal. Because you have the pen, you can just take out the zeros, move over the decimal, and then add that. So
Oh, that works.
Oh.
12.1 that and add the-
Look at how Naveen did it, because it's 10% interest. So Naveen said, oh, I know how to work with tens. I just have to move my decimal point over 1 each time. That works with our tens. So that's an easy way to check it. He was saying 10%. I moved it over from my decimal from here, I moved it over to here, so that's 11. I added that on.
It also,
But that's what I'm not understanding is that seems like you're taking 10% of the new total. And simple interest is interest charged on the principal only.
So when if we
So let's look at our formula here. What's changing here is our year from 1 to 2. Because we've got this 1 right here. So 0.2 times 2 would give us what? 0.2, or sorry, 2 times 0.10 gives us 0.2 plus 1 times 100. So if we times 100, that gives us 120. So I think in this example that he has written in the manual, I think this goes down to the compound interest.
we can start arrows.
So there really should be a line right here. Okay, so simple interest, it's 10% of the principal. So 10% of 100, 10% of 100, 10% of 100, keep tacking that on. So if we were to do this for up here, it would be 100 at year 0. Year 1 would be 110. Year 2 would be 120. Year 3 would be 130. Year 4, 140. Year 5, 150. That is for the simple interest. We moved down into the compound interest because they morphed into each other in my manual. Does the simple interest make sense? 10% of 100, 10% of 100, 10% of 100. When we're working with tens, it's really easy because we're used to that. If I were to say 17% interest, you would have to do the math. You would have to use the formula for that. Okay. The 10% interest was easy numbers to work with. When we get into goofy interest, use the formula. Okay, so this is the on top of the green line here is our simple interest. Okay, this would be what our table looks like for the simple interest. Okay, you just keep multiplying from the principal. So now I'm going to scroll up so we can see what the formula is for the compound interest. Oh my goodness.
never wrote this simple.
We did write the simple interest down.
But there's a line in this.
Oh, that simple interest, that was the formula. Okay, I put it up higher. That simple interest, that was just that formula that I wrote. The P times 1 plus rate times time. Okay, that's your formula for the simple interest. So compound interest, simple interest formula. So that would be down here. This is looking a little, I see. Okay. Getting it all. So what we talked about, so let's go over that simple interest again. If we had year and we have the balance, so at year 0 it was $100, year 1 is 110, year 2 was 120, year 3 130, year 4 was 140, year 5 150. If you use that equation, that formula, you get those numbers. So now compound interest. So is it making sense, Maddie? Simple interest. So now we have the right table on there. Feeling good about that. So now let's look at the compound interest. So let's look at that compound interest is, here's our definition. Interest applied to the running total. On the loan. Both principal and accrued interest. So this is what we kind of morphed into on that last example. So that was my bad. I was reading the manual wrong. So both principal and the accrued interest. So now instead of doing 10% of 100, 10% of 100, 10% of 100, now is when we do 10% of the new total every year. So our compound interest formula is the principal times 1 plus the rate.
Bryn Kafka to the office, please. Bryn Kafka.
This is a plus sign, not a T. 1 plus the rate to the T power. So that exponent is going to be however many, whatever the time is, that length of time. So if we're going to use the same example, we have our year and we have our balance. So at 0 years, when we first take it out, it was that $100. 10% interest. We know that got us to 110. That part stayed the same. But now we're going into year 2. Now is when we're doing it onto the year before. Instead of going back to our principal, our interest being tacked on, it's growing. So like Naveen had said, oh, we're working with tens, I can just move that decimal point over to know how much to increase. But when I tell you to find 33% increase, it's not so easy to do. So that's when we have to come down to our formula. Our principal of 100 times 1 plus the R. So our rate, let's fill that in. Our rate is 0.10, 10% to the T years. So if it is 2 years, 1 plus 0.10 times 1 plus 0.10, right? So this is going to be something that I'm going to say, okay, we can use our calculator on this. But again, do it by hand so you don't lose how to multiply big numbers, how to multiply with decimals. So if we have 1 plus a 10, that gives us a 1.1. We want to square that because it's the second year, so 1.1 times 1.1 plus our 100. Oh, did I do my decimals wrong? Thank you. So 1.1 times 100. And that's how we got,
Wait, no, because you still have to do, you have to do 1.1 times 1.1, right?
yes,
And then
1.1 times 1.1 gave me the 121, $1.21, and then times 100. That's how we get the 121. So let's write that out so we can see what we did. 1 plus 10 cents gives us $1.10. We need to square that. So 1.1 times 1.1 gave us 1.21. And we have to multiply that by 100. And that's how we get 121. Multi-steps. Okay, the only way we get comfortable with it is by doing practice. Knowing where to plug in our numbers, making sure we don't mess up on our steps. So, let's look at for year number 3. We know that inside, we add it together as that. Now we have to cube it. So $1.10 cubed. So 1.1 times 1.1 times 1.1 gives me 1.33.
Yep.
And then we have to multiply that by our 100. Now we're working with money, so we don't want to just leave it in the tenths place. Working with money, we want to put that 100th place, we want to fill it in. Did somebody have a question in the back? I thought I saw a hand go. Paul? Okay. Is that formula making sense?
Yeah.
Who figured out what the 4th year would give us? Caitlin?
$146.41.
Say that again for me?
$146.41. Okay?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
$146.41. What about year number 5? Caitlin?
$161.05.
$161.05. All you're changing in your formula from year to year is that time. So what exponent are we doing? How many times do we have to multiply that together? Okay, so simple interest, you're just multiplying it by the principal each time. So it's a little bit easier. How much you're going to tack on each time, you tack on the same rate. With 10%, it was $10, so I added $10 every year. Compound interest is more complicated. It grows at kind of a crazy rate. Maddie?
Can you do this equation, or can you do this without using a calculator?
Oh, you can always do that.
I was asking easily.
You'd use a lot of paper. If you're gonna do it paper and pencil, you can definitely do it. It just will use a lot of paper. Okay?
Okay.
So, if we look at page 54, we have one page. We have one page for the homework. So let's see what the directions are to make sure we do all of our directions. Use the formulas for simple and compound interest to answer the questions below. Show your work. That is, show how you are plugging in the values into the formula you are using. So do I want to just see an answer? No, I want to see your formula. I want to see the calculations that you are doing written out. So if we look at that first one, what would my formula be? Your bank gives you a $1,000 loan to buy a jet ski and charges you simple interest at 12% for 3 years. How much interest is earned on the loan? What is the total amount you will owe the bank? So, simple interest. How do I set up my calculations? Nathan?
It's 1,000. Then in parentheses, it's 1 plus 3 times 0.12.
So let's make sure we're setting it up the correct way. So it's R then T.
Oh,
So R is your 0.12 times T, which is your years. Okay? So make sure you're setting it up going the right way. Okay? Sometimes it will make a big difference. This one, it really doesn't make a difference multiplying backwards, but we just want to be in the habit of plugging in the numbers in the right spot. So that would be your calculation to show how much interest is earned on the loan. Then you have to say, what is the total amount you will owe to the bank? So it's a two-step question. You need 2 answers. Is that making sense? Actually, this one is going to show you what the total amount is. That one shows you what total amount you will owe. On that 3rd year, how much do you owe the bank? So this calculation is going to tell you what your total amount is. Then you need to do the math to figure out how much of that was interest and how much was your principal. So you want to take off the principal, so you're just left with how much interest was earned on the loan. Does that make sense? So if we do the math, what is the total amount that we owe at the end of 3 years? Who's done the math? Owen?
136, 1,000.
1,360? Is that what you got?
that's what I got.
Yeah, that's what I got.
That's what I got.
Okay, 1,360, if we do our math, that's how much is owed at the end of 3 years. So that's your total. Then we want to know interest. So how much interest is earned? So if we started with our principal of $1,000 and now we owe 1,360, how much interest was that? Yeah, we subtract out our principal. We don't want to know the principal. We don't want the principal. We want just the interest that was earned. So off of $1,000, the bank is earning $360. Okay, so you just have to take it one step at a time. Answer the first question, then answer the second question. Okay, so make sure you're answering both questions. With that, we're going to say goodbye to our friends at home. Have fun with your simple and compound interest. You don't really care too much about it in 6th grade, but let me tell you, when you're an adult and you're refinancing your house, it makes a big difference. So, my friends at home, hope you are feeling well and have a good afternoon.